What happens when a royal guest crosses the line on live television and challenges one of the most fearless hosts in late-night history? In just 36 seconds, a single comment would turn a routine interview into television chaos and end with a prince being escorted off the set. This is the story of the night Prince Harry walked onto the Bill Maher show and walked off in disgrace. The anticipation was massive. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, was scheduled to appear on Real Time with Bill Maher, and the audience was packed. People wanted to see sparks fly. They wanted controversy. They wanted drama. And Bill Maher's producers knew exactly what they were doing when they booked this guest. The show opened like any other episode. Bill Maher walked out to thunderous applause, cracking jokes about the week's political headlines, making the audience laugh with his signature wit. He was in his element, sharp and commanding. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. "Please, welcome to the show, Prince Harry," Bill announced. The audience applauded as Harry walked onto the stage, waving with that practiced royal smile. He sat down across from Bill, and the interview began innocently enough. Small talk about California weather, adjusting to life in America, the usual softballs to warm up the conversation. But Bill Maher doesn't do softballs for long. "So, Harry," Bill said, leaning forward with that knowing smirk, "you've been pretty vocal about a lot of things since leaving the royal family. Privacy, media intrusion, mental health, all important topics. But here's what I don't get. You say you want privacy, yet you're doing interviews, podcasts, Netflix shows, writing books. That's not privacy. That's a publicity tour." The audience laughed and some applauded. It was a fair point, delivered with Bill's trademark directness. Harry's smile tightened just a bit. "Well, Bill," Harry responded, his tone measured but with an edge. "There's a difference between sharing your truth on your own terms and being hunted by tabloids who make up lies about you and your family." Sure, Bill said, nodding. "But you're still putting yourself out there. You're still the product. I mean, if I said I wanted to disappear from public life and then showed up on every podcast and streaming service available, people would call me a hypocrite. Why should you be any different?" The tension in the room shifted. You could feel it. Harry's jaw clenched slightly, and his posture changed. He sat up straighter, more defensive. "Because my situation is different," Harry said. "I was born into this. I didn't choose it. And when the institution failed to protect my wife and my family, I had to make a choice. I chose them over tradition." "Noble," Bill replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Very noble. But let's be honest, Harry, you've made millions from that choice. You've monetized your grievances. That's not sacrifice. That's a business model." The audience erupted in applause and laughter. Bill was hitting his stride, and Harry was clearly rattled. His face flushed red, and his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "That's not fair." Harry shot back, his voice rising. "You don't know what it's like to have your entire life dissected, to have people you've never met write lies about your wife, to watch your family suffer because of a system that refuses to change." "You're right. I don't know what that's like," Bill said, his tone calm and steady. "But I do know what it's like to face criticism. I do it every single week on this show. And you know what I don't do? I don't run away and then spend years complaining about it while cashing checks." The audience went wild. Cheers, applause, some gasps. This was the confrontation they came for. Bill was relentless, and Harry was losing his composure. "This is exactly the problem," Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. "People like you sit in your comfortable studios and judge situations you know nothing about. You reduce complex issues to punchlines. It's easy to mock someone when you've never walked in their shoes." "Oh, here we go," Bill said, rolling his eyes. "The 'you don't understand me' defense." "Look, Harry, I'm not mocking you. I'm asking you to be consistent. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand privacy and then sell your story to the highest bidder. That's what we call in America having your cake and eating it too." Harry stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The audience gasped. Bill remained seated, looking up at him with an expression of mild amusement. "I came here thinking we could have a real conversation," Harry said, his voice trembling. "But you're just like all the rest. You don't want dialogue. You want a circus." "Sit down, Harry," Bill said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "We're not done here." "Yes, we are," Harry snapped. "I don't have to sit here and take this disrespect." "Disrespect?" Bill said, standing up now to match Harry's energy. "I'm asking you questions. Tough questions, maybe, but that's what I do. That's what journalism is. If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." The audience was silent now, watching this unfold with wide eyes. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this meltdown. "You think you're so clever?" Harry said, pointing a finger at Bill. "You think you're speaking truth to power. But you're just a bully with a microphone. And you're just a privileged guy who's mad that people aren't giving you a free pass anymore," Bill fired back. "You want sympathy? Fine. You want understanding? I get it. But you don't get to lecture people about accountability while avoiding any yourself." Harry's face was bright red now. He looked around the studio, at the audience, at the cameras, as if searching for someone to back him up. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was deafening. "You know what your problem is, Bill?" Harry said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're stuck in the past. You're a relic. Your views are outdated, and your comedy is offensive. You represent everything that's wrong with this generation of so-called entertainers." The audience booed, loudly. Bill just smiled. "Outdated?" Bill said. "That's rich coming from someone whose entire identity is based on a hereditary monarchy. But sure, I'm the relic. At least I stand for something," Harry shot back. "At least I use my platform to make a difference. What do? You sit here every week and tear people down. You contribute nothing." "I contribute perspective," Bill said, his voice calm and measured, which only seemed to infuriate Harry more. "I contribute honesty. And right now, I'm contributing a reality check that you clearly need." Harry took a step closer to Bill, his fists clenched at his sides. The audience gasped again. Security guards near the stage tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. "You want honesty?" Harry said, his voice low and dangerous. "Here's some honesty. You're a has-been. Your ratings are tanking. Nobody cares what you think anymore. You're irrelevant." The audience booed even louder now, some people shouting at Harry to leave. Bill just stood there, arms crossed, that same amused smile on his face. "If I'm so irrelevant," Bill said, "why did you agree to come on my show? Why are you here, Harry? What do you need from me?" Harry had no answer. He just stood there, breathing hard, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. He'd lost control of the situation completely, and everyone in that studio knew it. "That's what I thought," Bill said. "You came here for exposure. You came here to promote whatever your next project is. And now that I'm not playing along, now that I'm actually challenging you, you can't handle it." "I don't need this," Harry muttered, turning away. "I don't need you." "Then leave," Bill said simply. "The door's right there." "But let me tell you something before you go. Running away doesn't make you brave. It makes you a coward." That was the breaking point. Harry spun around, his eyes blazing with fury. "How dare you?" he said, his voice shaking. "How dare you call me a coward? You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what I've sacrificed." "I know you sacrificed your family for money and fame," Bill said, not backing down an inch. "I know you've spent years airing private grievances in public forums. And I know you're standing on my stage right now having a tantrum because someone finally called you out on it. You're a disgrace," Harry spat. "And you're a hypocrite," Bill replied. "But at least I'm entertaining." The audience laughed and applauded. That laugh, that applause, was the final straw for Harry. His composure shattered completely. "This is abuse," Harry shouted. "This is harassment. You can't treat people like this. I'm a guest on your show." "You were a guest," Bill corrected. "Now you're just someone who's overstayed their welcome." Harry looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to come to his defense. The audience stared back at him in silence. Some looked uncomfortable, but most just looked disappointed. This wasn't the prince they'd expected. This was someone who couldn't handle basic criticism. "I want to speak to your producers," Harry demanded. "I want an apology." "You're not getting one," Bill said flatly. "You came on this show knowing exactly what it is. You knew I was going to ask tough questions. If you wanted a puff piece interview, you should have gone to one of those morning shows where they ask about your favorite color and what you eat for breakfast." "You're impossible," Harry said, shaking his head. "And you're exhausting," Bill replied. "Seriously, do you ever take responsibility for anything? Or is everything always someone else's fault?" That question hung in the air. Harry opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He was trapped, and he knew it. Anything he said now would just make him look worse. "I'm leaving," Harry finally said, "and I'm making sure everyone knows how you treated me." "Please do," Bill said. "Free publicity. I'd appreciate it." The audience laughed again. Harry's face twisted in rage. He turned and started walking toward the exit, his movements jerky and agitated. But Bill wasn't done yet. "Hey, Harry," Bill called out. Harry stopped but didn't turn around. "When you get home tonight and you're writing your next memoir chapter about how mean I was to you, do me a favor, include the part where you called me irrelevant and then stormed off my show. That's the kind of irony people love." Harry whipped around one more time. "You're not worth it," he said. "You're not worth any of this. Then why are you still here?" Bill asked, spreading his arms wide. "Go, leave. Nobody's stopping you." For a moment, it looked like Harry might charge at Bill. His fists were clenched, his whole body was tense, and his face was contorted with rage. Security guards moved closer, just in case. But Harry didn't move. He just stood there, trembling with anger and humiliation. "You'll regret this," Harry said quietly. "You'll regret treating me this way." "I doubt it," Bill said. "But even if I do, at least I'll have great footage for next week's show." That was it. Harry turned and marched off the stage, nearly knocking over a camera operator in his haste to leave. The audience watched him go in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the applause started. It began with a few people and quickly grew into a standing ovation. They were applauding Bill, not Harry. They were applauding someone who'd stood his ground and refused to be bullied by someone who thought their title meant they deserved special treatment. Bill took a bow, that trademark smirk firmly in place. "Ladies and gentlemen, Prince Harry," he said sarcastically. The audience roared with laughter and applause. And that, folks, is what happens when you confuse a talk show with a therapy session. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll discuss why some people need to learn the difference between criticism and persecution. Stay with us. The cameras cut to commercial, but the energy in that studio was electric. Everyone was buzzing about what they'd just witnessed. Producers were frantically making phone calls. Audience members were pulling out their phones to text their friends about what had just happened. And somewhere backstage, Prince Harry was probably realizing that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his media career. Bill sat back down at his desk, and his producer rushed over to check on him. "Are you okay?" the producer asked. "That got pretty intense." "I'm fine," Bill said, taking a sip of water. "That was great television. Do you think he'll sue?" the producer asked nervously. Bill laughed. "Let him try. Everything I said was fair." Comment. "He came on a political talk show and got mad when we talked politics. That's on him, not me." The producer nodded, still looking worried, but Bill was completely relaxed. He'd been doing this for decades. He'd faced down politicians, celebrities, activists, religious leaders. A disgruntled prince wasn't going to rattle him. Back in the studio, the audience was still talking amongst themselves, replaying the confrontation in hushed, excited voices. Some people were defending Harry, saying Bill had been too harsh, but most agreed that Harry had completely overreacted. He'd come into this interview with an agenda, expecting softball questions and easy sympathy, and when he didn't get it, he'd thrown a fit. The commercial break ended, and Bill was back on camera, looking as composed as ever. "Welcome back," he said. "For those of you just joining us, you missed quite a show. Our guest decided that answering questions was too difficult, so he left. Which is fine. This isn't the first time someone's walked off this show, and it won't be the last. But let's talk about what just happened, because I think it's important." Bill leaned forward, his expression serious now. "Look, I get it. Being in the public eye is hard. Being criticized is hard. But here's the thing. If you put yourself out there, if you write books and do interviews and documentaries about your life, you don't get to be mad when people have opinions about it. That's not how it works. You can't control the narrative completely, and when someone asks you a tough question, your job is to answer it, not run away." The audience applauded. Bill nodded in acknowledgement. "Now, some people are going to say I was too tough on him," Bill continued. "They're going to say I was disrespectful, that I should have been more sympathetic. And to those people, I say this: respect is earned, not given. And sympathy has limits. Yes, Harry's been through difficult things, but so have millions of other people, and they don't have the resources or platform he does. They don't get to write best-selling books or sign massive streaming deals. So forgive me if I'm not crying into my pillow tonight because a prince got his feelings hurt." More applause. Bill was on a roll now, doing what he did best, turning a controversial moment into a teachable one. "The point is," Bill said, "we live in a culture now where everyone wants to be a victim, Everyone wants to be the persecuted hero of their own story, and sometimes that's legitimate. But sometimes it's just narcissism dressed up as activism. And I think we need to be able to tell the difference. The audience gave him another standing ovation. Bill smiled and waved them off. All right, he said. Let's move on. We've got a great panel coming up, and I promise they all know how to handle a disagreement without storming off the set. The show continued, but that confrontation was all anyone would remember. It was the moment that defined the episode, the clip that would be replayed endlessly online, the story that would dominate headlines for days. Prince Harry had walked onto that stage thinking he could charm his way through another interview, and instead, he'd revealed something much darker. He'd revealed that beneath the polished exterior and the carefully crafted image, there was someone who couldn't handle being challenged, someone who expected deference simply because of who he was. And Bill Maher, love him or hate him, had exposed that truth in front of millions of people. As the studio audience filed out after the show, they were still talking about it. Some were laughing, some were shocked, but everyone agreed on one thing. They'd just witnessed something extraordinary. They'd seen a host stand up to someone who thought they were untouchable, and they'd seen that person crumble under the slightest pressure. Bill stayed on set for a while after everyone left, talking with his crew, replaying the moments that had gone viral in real time. He knew this was going to be huge. He knew this was going to generate controversy and think pieces and angry social media posts. But he also knew he'd done nothing wrong. He'd asked fair questions, he'd pushed back against hypocrisy, and he'd refused to be intimidated. That's what good journalism looks like. That's what holding people accountable looks like. And if a prince couldn't handle it, that said more about the prince than it did about the journalist. The cameras had captured everything. Every eye roll, every clenched fist, every moment of Harry's mounting frustration and eventual breakdown. It was all there, preserved forever, a testament to what happens when someone who's used to being coddled finally encounters someone who refuses to play along. And in the end, that's what made this confrontation so compelling. It wasn't just about one interview gone wrong. It was about the clash between two different worldviews. On one side, you had someone who believed their status entitled them to special treatment, who thought sharing their struggles made them beyond criticism. On the other side, you had someone who believed that everyone, regardless of their title or background, should be able to defend their choices when questioned. Bill Maher won that clash, not because he was louder or meaner, but because he was right. He'd asked legitimate questions and received defensive deflections. He'd pointed out inconsistencies and been accused of harassment. He'd done his job, and in doing so, he'd revealed the truth that Harry had been trying so hard to hide. The prince wasn't a victim. He was just someone who'd made questionable choices and didn't like being called out on them. As Bill finally left the studio that night, he felt satisfied. Not smug, not triumphant, just satisfied. He'd done what he always did. He'd spoken truth to power, even when that power came with a royal title. And he'd reminded everyone watching that, in America, titles don't mean much. What matters is whether you can back up your words with substance. Harry couldn't, and now the whole world knew it. The next morning, the video of the confrontation was everywhere. Millions of views, thousands of comments, endless debates about who was right and who was wrong. But for everyone who'd been in that studio, for everyone who'd watched it happen in real time, there was no debate. They'd seen a man who couldn't defend his own choices throw a tantrum when someone asked him to do exactly that. They'd seen someone who preached about mental health and kindness lose his temper and lash out with personal insults. They'd seen someone who talked about breaking free from toxic institutions demand the kind of deference that those very institutions were built on. In short, they'd seen a hypocrite, and Bill Maher had made sure they couldn't unsee it. That's the power of good television. It reveals truth. It strips away pretense. It shows people as they really are, not as they want to be seen. And on that night, Prince Harry was revealed as someone who talked a big game about accountability and growth, but couldn't practice either when the spotlight was on him. Bill Maher didn't kick Prince Harry off his show. Prince Harry kicked himself off by refusing to engage honestly with challenging questions. He chose ego over dialogue. He chose outrage over explanation, and he chose to walk away rather than defend the very positions he'd spent years promoting. That was his choice, and it was a choice that would define how people saw him moving forward. Not as a brave truth-teller standing up to the establishment, but as someone who couldn't handle the same scrutiny he'd subjected others to. Someone who wanted all the benefits of being in the public eye without any of the responsibilities that came with it. The studio lights had revealed all of that in just under an hour. And Bill Maher, standing behind his desk with that knowing smile, had been the one to flip the switch.